everyone and welcome to my studio. I'm Diane and today I'm going to have a go at copying a painting I did a while ago of a cute little hedgehog confronting a bumblebee. Seems apt at the moment since all the hedgehogs are coming out of hibernation and the bees are buzzing. Now I noticed when I came to look at this painting that what I actually had was a very round kind of shape to the hedgehog, so I decided that the best way to reproduce this would be to start with a circle and then to add the cute little nose on the front, and then we would be pretty much set. And I found a convenient round object, which is the lid to a sugar dish, and placed that on my sheet of 140-pound watercolour paper, which I've taped down. And using a soft pencil, I decided I would just draw around the circle and indicate very lightly the ground that he's standing on. And then basically out of the circle on the left-hand side, we're just going to draw a couple of feet down there at the bottom, which were actually missing from the original. And then I'm going to pop in his nose, starting with his shiny black nose there, and then his muzzle just popping out of the circle. And all of a sudden we have a cute little hedgehog emerging there like magic. Have to be careful about where you put his eye, so when you come to draw that in, you want to just try to visualize it in your mind's eye before you put it in. Don't put it too far back or too low down, but just quite close to the nose. And hedgehogs actually have really small noses, small eyes, so don't make it too big. But then they have these cute little ears. They are actually like little piggies, and they have little piggy-like ears sticking out there, so one on each side. Just draw that in. And really, when you've added a little mouth like that, you're pretty much set as far as the drawing goes. And then going to indicate, rubbing out the extra pencil marks of the circle, we're just going to indicate the sort of spikiness of the hedgehog a little bit. So you know basically where you're going to be going with your paint. Of course, the next thing to do is going to be to put in the bumblebee. And I wouldn't say that this was exactly to scale. I've got the bumblebee quite large to emphasize how important the bee is, although in actual fact, of course, they're not anywhere near as big in relation to a hedgehog as this is going to be. So we start with a kind of off-center oval for the head, then a couple of circles flattened to make the body. And then the key is to remember they have 6 legs, so we have at least 3 showing, and then a couple of antennae in the front, and then Bob's your uncle, you've got a bee. A couple of oval wings there coming out the back. Just keeping it really, really simple, just the basic elements that make up a bee. This is the kind of painting you might want to do to give to somebody who's doing out a nursery or something like that. It would make a lovely painting to contribute to a wildlife themed nursery for a new baby or a young child, of course. So we want it to be cute. Just getting rid of the excess bits of rubber there from my eraser, and thinking about the colours I'm going to use and the brushes. And first of all, let's look at the colours. All I have here are a range of browns, basically. We've got quinacridone gold, burnt sienna, sepia, burnt umber and black. And I had yellow there, and that's what I start off with the bee. And I'm using a size 11 round brush, and this is my size 7. Just ordinary round nylon brushes, which you can buy for very few dollars online. If you're not sure what to buy, have a look at the description underneath this video. I've got loads of links there to items in Amazon that you can take a look at and see whether that would suit you. So just starting with the eye, as I usually do with animals, and I'm just picking up some black, trying it out on the nose, and then going straight into the eye, which is just simply around a circle of black with a highlight in it, and the same goes for the nose. We don't need anything more complicated than that for this particular painting. I try to keep my paintings as uncontrived and unfussy as possible. And now, since I've got black on my brush, I'm popping over to the bee and I'm going to drop in his head and the black bands around his body, or the main black band there. It's surprising actually how big some of these bumblebees are that we've got here. They call them bourdons in France, which is lovely. It makes you think of what they do, bourdon. And a bee that's buzzing is a bee that's bourdonnée. It's wonderful. The French language is so onomatopoeic. Okay, so now I'm putting in the legs in black paint also, and the second black stripe at the back. Now behind that black stripe, the bee has a sort of light coloured area which we'll put in after we've done the yellow bits. So this is cadmium yellow, or in this case Scheveningen yellow medium, same thing really, and just dropping that in, and I will be adding some quinacridone gold to that to give it a bit more shape, but I'm not going to fuss with that, just the impression of a bee. And then picking up some a little bit of grey there. That's a mixture of Potter's Pink and Cobalt Blue. Very, very weak. Hardly any colour to it at all. You could use practically any colour on your palette for that. And then dropping in the quinacridone gold that I just mentioned. Leave that to blend in naturally. No need to fuss with that. And then just to put paid to the bee, I'm picking up a little tiny bit of Potter's Pink here. Again, you could use Cobalt Blue, you could use violet, you could use grey. It really doesn't matter. The wings of a bee are kind of iridescent and pearlescent and all sorts of colours reflected from the light. So it doesn't really matter what colour you use. And now we're going to turn our attention to the hedgehog, and I'm switching to my larger brush, my number 11, size 11. Round brush, and I'm going to start off with a very, very pale wash of sepia. Again, that could be any shade of brown really. You don't have to use the same colours I used. In fact, when I've done this painting before, I've used different colours, but this, I just wanted to keep this very neutral for this particular version. So as a basis, I'm just dropping in, like I say, a very, very diluted wash of sepia, and I think it's probably got a bit of something else mixed in there, probably a little bit of blue. And I'm picking up a little bit more of that colour and just making it a little bit darker as we go into the actual spiny parts of the hedgehog. These creatures are remarkably difficult to paint, but I like to try and just give the impression of hedgehogginess. I don't think, I'm not certainly going to try to paint every single spine on their body. That would be thoroughly boring. So I've switched there to burnt sienna, and now I'm coming in with burnt umber. A variety of browns is what you're looking for. Just make it mix and match, whatever takes your fancy. You could paint this in any colour really. Any brown, you can use whatever you happen to have on your palette. But just blend and let it mix on the paper. Drop them in, see how they move. Adjust it if it doesn't seem right. There are so many different ways of doing this. And now with the point of the brush, I'm just adding in some darker areas here to indicate the spines of the hedgehog, just drawing that out past the body, make it a little bit spiky there. And at the same time doing the same thing down here to indicate the feet. Just darkening that up a little bit. And putting in the ears, what I like to do is to draw the outline of the ear in a darker colour and the back of the ear in a darker colour, and then I'll drop in a little bit of probably Potter's Pink or Permanent Rose into the centre there, just diluted down with a little bit of blue to give a greyed off pink, and then just leave that to blend. And now I'm dropping in a few more colours around the muzzle and the front of the hedgehog. And from here on, I'm just going to continue to build up the colours a little bit until I feel that I've gone as far as I need to or ought to. Just kind of feeling my way. And now I'm just going to shift my attention to the foreground, and to do the foreground this time I've decided to use my Hake, which is a Ron Ranson special, and I'm just going to look for a mixture of neutral colours here. So I've got my palette from a previous painting sitting here, and I'm just going to mix up what you could call a dirty grey or whatever from those leftover colours, and I'm just going to use the brush sideways on to indicate some ground underneath the hedgehog there, just brushing that in and dropping in a few darker tones as well. So we've got a mixture of various different blues and browns and all sorts of violets and things like that that were on that palette, and rather than breaking into a whole bunch of other paint, I can use that up, which is the economical way of going about things. Now just flicking the paint up from the piece of land there to indicate some grasses, just in a kind of random sort of way, something kind of just impressionistic. We're not aiming for great detail here, just a little neutral bit of land. And then I'm going to come in with some slightly stronger colours. This is a sort of mossy green kind of shade, and I'll be adding a little bit more brown in a second, so that can all just blend in and give an agreeable neutral background for the, well, not background, underground, what do you call that, surface for the hedgehog to stand on. So then to add to that, I'm going to put some longer grasses in using my script liner brush, or sword liner, or rigger, or a long-haired number 1 or 2 brush, which will give me a nice flicky effect. Now I'm just dabbing out some excess water there, which had accumulated in a dip in the paper. This is because, being lazy, I haven't bothered to stretch this paper, and I just taped it down. And where water accumulates, if you haven't stretched it, taped paper, it will sometimes buckle a little bit, which is not seriously important on a painting of this size, but you just have to be ready with a tissue to mop it up. Just using the sword liner again to drop in a few more grasses and bits and pieces, and to make some splashes in all the wrong places, but never mind. And a few dark tones, but these are going to blend in. They're not going to sit there as dark splodges. They're going to just run and blend in with the paint underneath, which is obviously still wet. Now you could, if you wanted to, you could take this a lot darker, you could put in a lot more colour, you could do all sorts of things, and I'm actually going to take it a little bit further, but you could also leave it right now. It's entirely up to you. I'm going to do a couple of other things to it just for the purposes of demonstrations, really. So I'm adding more texture to the foreground here, just using the script liner on its side to give a dry brush effect with the broken lines there, where the paint is quite dry on the brush and the paper is quite dry, so you get a sort of broken, interesting effect. And then dropping in a few darks underneath the hedgehog as well. I'm just lifting out a little bit of excess paint there using the thirsty brush technique, where I have a clean brush with no paint on it, and I'm just pressing it into the damp paint to lift out a little area that I want to have a little bit lighter than it would otherwise be. And now I'm coming back in with some quinacridone gold, which I decided just to drop into the top part of the hedgehog, where perhaps the light, the sunshine, might be hitting him, so his colour might be a little bit more golden. And then again, emphasising the shadowy area on the chest there with a little bit more burnt sienna, and just moving the paint around a little bit. I don't want to get too fussy at this point. It's so easy to overwork. Very, very tempting. And I'm just putting in some slightly darker areas there to indicate the shading on the spines of the hedgehog, and some shadow there on his forehead to give him a bit more shape. A few more sticky out bits there. It's a good idea to use an actual photograph of a real hedgehog to a certain extent if you want to get the details anatomically correct, but I didn't do that in this case because I just really wanted to copy a painting I'd done and sold before. So I'm just basically doing the same as I did last time when I did have a photo to work from. So you don't always need to go to a photo, especially if you're not really aiming for realism, and I wasn't aiming for realism here at all. This is more the kind of thing, as I said before, that you would put in a nursery as a sort of decorative item to go with a woodland theme. So just to add a few more dark tones, I've picked up my watercolour pencil that I like to use, my black Staedtler aquarelle pencil, and if you're interested in purchasing some of those, they're in the description below where there are links. I find that's quite handy for sharpening up some of the shadows, putting in the mouth, putting in the whiskers, sharpening up the ears, and so on and so forth, which is always easier to do with a pencil than it is with a brush. And you know you're going to get a really good dark there, whereas when you use paint, of course, it always dries lighter than you think it's going to be, which can be irritating. But the watercolour pencil doesn't really do that. In fact, sometimes it dries too dark and you end up having to lift some of it out, but that's another story. So now I'm just edging the black on the bee to give it a bit more form and body and shape and character and all the rest of it. And then I'm going to be emphasising the grasses, coming in a little bit there with a few shadows on some of the grasses, not too much, not too many, not too much detail, just a little bit. And of course, once this is completely dry, I'll have to take out the pencil marks from the underdrawing. I won't take all of them out though, for two reasons. Some of them will have paint on top of them, which means that they won't come out even if I want them to. And also some of them are actually quite pleasing in the effect they have, especially in the grasses. It's often, certainly it's to my taste, not everybody likes it I suppose, but I do, to have some of the original pencil marks in the painting even when it's finished. That's a choice you have really, but I quite like to do it like that. And there we are, that's the painting finished. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for watching and thank you for all your comments. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave them in the comments below. I hope you learnt something today, and if you did, please like and subscribe to my channel as we continue to grow quite fast, which is really exciting. Don't forget to join the Facebook group Learn to Paint Watercolour, which is also growing at a phenomenal rate, and I'm sure that you'll find lots of things over there to interest you too, because we've got thousands of members now. If you are not confident in your drawing, do go to our website dianeantone.com and you can download a traceable of this painting amongst many others as well, all free of charge, no cost for that whatsoever. So just pop on over there when you have a moment and you can download, I think about, I don't know how many there are now, probably 30 at least, different paintings that we've put up over the last few months. So thanks again for being here. Have a lovely evening. Still waiting for the spring to arrive, but I'm sure it will come sometime. So bye bye for now, everybody. Bye bye. Bye bye.